Okay, it is Monday, August 21st, 8:27 a.m. Coming at you from Maui, Hawaii. And we are here for tea and transits. I got my tea and we are in a transit. So this has been a doozy of a transit for me personally. This whole like clinging fire and like recognizing the illusions in my own life. Illusions that I've come to like really embrace and love and have drawn like a lot of power from, and watching them just kind of come undone has been, similar to the fires in Maui, of like very revealing of what's actually going on underneath the surface. Thankfully for me, it hasn't necessarily been this like earth shattering thing. So much of it's been like oh, hey, you've been building roots on Maui and that's great, but also remember who you are, and consider taking your family on a trip. Which for me, I'm like, oh, but I've been building all these roots here on Maui and now you want me to take a trip, Spirit? What the hell is going on? So anyway, and I understand that it is, and so we do only have one more day. So the shift is going to happen with the new Neutrino app. Guys, there's so bright there. Hold on, let me turn on dark mode. There's a way to see. There's a way to see when exactly the transit shifts to the next one. So you just like pull the slider back right there, and then the slider is going to move forward at increments of planetary shifts. And so I just focused on the sun and earth, and I hit play, and then I hit stop right when it switched to 6, and then it tells me the time that shift happens. And so for me, it's going to happen at 4:08 a.m. tomorrow morning. And so again, I'm currently in this time. If you're on the other side of the world, you're not in this time. But when I go to sleep and I wake up, I'm in a new transit. And I know that's true for Cassandra and Chris as well, Natty. For those of us on the West Coast, or on the the West Coast, transit is going to happen overnight. And so we're in the 5th line of this transit. And so what that is going to be like is it's a heretical line. So this is where I have such an affinity for heretics, because how you say, like, I am a 3/5, but also just I think the heretic energy is one that I have a soft spot for, in the sense that all like the witches that were prosecuted, and all the Gnostic priests that were prosecuted, and all the druids, and all the people that had like real solutions and real influence, that were thrown under the bus by through the effort to standardize and homogenize thing and Mr. Smith things. So I got a soft spot for all my heretics, and that's one thing that I'm realizing. This whole evolved human design is like, if I look at my body graph, I'm creating a community ultimately built around my body graph, which is becoming more and more clear to me. Which is cool, because there's room for everybody, but then there's also not necessarily room for everybody, if you guys know what I mean. So anyway, let's get into the transits. We got 29, the abysmal perseverance in the sun. This is the deep within the deep. Persistence despite difficulties has its inevitable rewards, and we are in line 5, which is overreach, the tendency to bite off more than one can chew. The sun exalted, where the drive is in the design and not the ambition driven, the uncontrollable drive to say yes. The detriment is failed ambition, saying yes, overextending one's resources, and failing to persevere. So again, with the detriment and the exaltation, it's not like one is better and the other is bad. It's like, which one are you experiencing, and how, and also entertaining the possibility that you can be experiencing both. And naturally, with the framework of the transits, knowing and being able to look at your chart and discerning for yourself, like, is this something, is this a consistent energy that's going to be relevant for me? Which, if you do not have 29 somewhere in your personality or your design placements, this is just passing weather. So the overreach that you may feel, don't be too hard on yourself if you overcommit and are unable to deliver. Ultimately, just learn from that and pay attention to the transits a little more. So with the scale here, we have on the exaltation side is the uncontrollable drive to say yes. And on the detriment side, we have saying yes, overextending one's resources and failing to persevere. So the exaltation of this 29.5 is ultimately a discernment between the drive to say yes and actually saying yes, and understanding that those are two different things. Having the drive to say yes and actually saying yes. And then this brings us back to our strategy and authority, which for reflectors, of course, it's like pretty much we're always saying, give me 28 days and stuff. Or there's how you say, a madness that I'm realizing the reflectors can get into, where it's like you literally can start saying, hey, I need 28 days for every decision, right? Even like smaller decisions, like, do you want to go to this party? And just like see what happens as an experiment. It's kind of something that I've been doing. And, like actually this morning, I woke up to a text that I had unknowingly been writing out a lunar wave on. And it was around a trade agreement where me and my partner had gotten some massages, and the trade was to do some human design work. And, the timelines hadn't necessarily synced up. And now that they're syncing up, I'm looking about it. I was like, oh, that was about 28 days ago that we got, that we initially started that conversation around that agreement. And, it's something that still feels good for me, obviously, because like, something that's also been really helpful for that is the keynoting section, which is, it's a keynoting class. It's called the Rogue class, and Prana is the one running that. But it's this very like masculine, scientific, condense your chart down to a couple sentences for unpacking later. It's kind of like if you guys are have a bunch of files and you want to send it to somebody, you zip it down into a zip file, so one file, and then you send that to somebody, and then they can unzip it on the other end and kind of like decrypt it, although it's not necessarily encrypted with that level of protection. But anyway, coming back to what I was talking about is like, if you have 29, right, understanding that all of these lines are a part of the maturation process of 29, right? So if you have, gate line 2, assessment, persistence by tempered caution, and we're in line 5, these gates are particularly beneficial for you to pay attention to the entire transit, because again, this is like a, this is not like a vacuum. This is a trend, and one thing yields to the next. Winter yields to spring, and then spring yields to summer, and there's this gradient that happens. And so it's really helpful don't have it, or for those of us with very open body graphs, it's really important to listen to the transits for kind of like a different reason, in the sense that you want to know who you're not, right? Because there's a tendency in life to focus on what you're not, as opposed to focusing on what you are. And there's this saying among like NASCAR drivers or Formula One racers, where they're going like almost 200 miles an hour, is if you think, you die. And basically what they're talking about is, if you're driving a car at 200 miles an hour and there's a crash that happens over there, and you even look over there, or you even think about the crash going on there, because you're moving so fast, your body will just naturally like twitch and move into that. And so we're developing a hyper focus on our form, on our body graph, for the purpose of being able to upgrade our paradigm, our mental. And again, Prana, the homie, has given us such valuable information. He created this write-up around, he said he was listening to a podcast about neuroscience. They weren't talking about human design, but he was looking at the neuroscience through the lens of human design, and they were talking about this top-down processing, which is sort of like your past experiences, your memories, your paradigm, what you expect to happen. That's a top down processing. Then there's the bottom up processing, which is stimulus and senses and reality and experiences. And ultimately, that you need the two to meet, because if you're doing top down processing but you're not connected to your body, well, then you're just going to get the same thing over and over and over again. But then if you're doing bottom up processing and you're not remembering, or you're not reflecting, or you're not upgrading your mind, well, then you're just living kind of like in a hedonistic way, or just like just in the moment, but not ever having a context to what moment that you're in. And so we need both of them. And in human design, the outer authority, or the mind, would be the top down processing, is the analysis and the cataloging and the creation of the paradigm, right? And then the bottom up processing would be your body graph and your form, which this is, I think, the bottom up processing that a lot of people come into resistance, because, there's certain suppressions on our senses. There's certain stories that this top down processing has claimed through the inner authority, by way of, hey, this works in the outer authority, just keep doing this. But it could be totally suppressing a channel or a center from the bottom up processing, from your body graph. And so anyway, it's a beautiful read. Prana has a wonderful way with words. I remember him asking me a couple days ago to be like, hey, can I post this in the Discord? Is this appropriate? And I was like, bro, it would be inappropriate if you didn't post that shit. What are you talking about? But anyway, enough about that. Let's go into Gate 30. Gate 30, the clinging fire. This is in the solar plexus. This is about feelings. Freedom recognized as an illusion, and limitation accepted as fate. So I'm huge on freedom. I'm huge on freedom. I'm huge on the ability and the sovereignty to do what you will. And this gate is showing me how much like freedom is an illusion, in the sense that absolute freedom is an illusion. In the same way that absolute creation is also an illusion. Like, we have limits on our physical body, on our forms, right? On our body graphs, on our the meat and potatoes of who we are. We have limits on that, and yet our minds have this unlimited capacity, and our souls have this unlimited capacity. And so it's a real how you say, kind of ball buster for a lot of the people in like new age communities that are talking about this. You're this creator God consciousness, and you can do anything and you can make anything happen. That's true. But unconsciously, what these people are doing that they're not necessarily talking about is they're accepting their form. They're accepting their limitations. And that's kind of what this, we're confined to 3D realms. Exactly. But this gate 30, it's in the solar plexus, and it reaches towards 41 in the root. And we were in 41 a couple weeks ago. 41 being this kind of like pressurized fantasy energy, or this contraction of like, this isn't enough, like what else is there? So Violet, you have 41, so that means that this gate 30 is activating that channel of what is that channel? Let me since I got into the keynotes, it's like I've been wanting to really like glue these in my mind, because they're not hard. It's the 3041. It's about recognition, a design of focused energy, feelings, and that is comprised of recognition of feelings and contraction. So it's kind of like vocab words. You guys remember when you used to make like a like, oh, biblioteca, library, baño, bathroom. So if you have this channel activated via the transits, again, there's going to be this how you say, this maybe this desire for recognition, or this pressure and this feeling of like recognition. And whether it's present in your life or it's not present in your life, again, understanding that these are transits, that this feeling is going to pass ultimately, and that it might become activated by next year's transits, or a half year later, because the transits move in like half year patterns. Like in exactly half a year from now, the sun is going to be in gate 30 and the earth is going to be in gate 29, which is why I read both of them. But with what we have with those kind of activations, is especially if you have an undefined root or an undefined solar plexus during a transit, or when someone comes along and hooks you up, when your centers become defined by way of, again, someone hooking you up, composites or pentas or transits, it does not necessarily mean that your centers are now going to be for you again. Right now, it's like your center is still an open center, but just because the root pressure is defined, what it's really saying is that you're going to feel extra root pressure, right? Not necessarily your unique root pressure, because you still have that mix of that open center and that energy that's coming in, right? And this is one of the misconceptions that even I had in the beginning of learning about the transits and how to use the transits, because it's very like, how you say it can be very heady, but it makes a lot of sense, because again, we're not really supposed to, at least in human design, it's not fruitful for us to act in out of conditioning through the transits, or out of conditioning through by way of other people. Like, we're already doing that. This is just a way of discerning what qualities and why exactly we're doing that, or what thing that's active is causing that kind of response. And so let's go ahead and drop into line 5, and then we'll talk more about that. So line 5 of gate 30 is irony. It's recognition and dedication to transitory goals, of course. Exaltation is the strength derived from knowledge and experience, that 2 steps forward and 1 step back is still a step forward. Each new feeling brings back an old feeling before progress can take place. That's that gradient I was talking about. The detriment is the anger engendered by the irony, frustration with its limitations, and a desire to eliminate the entire process. So frustration and anger with the old feelings brought into the emotional awareness with each new experience. So this is like, getting unplugged from the matrix and then being like, I want to go back in. I want to go back in. This world is too hard. That's one of them. Another way is like, there's this growing trend right now, which is beautiful, because I think people care a lot about their spiritual health now, but almost they care a little bit too much, to the point where they're trying to get it all over with, which is like an open route, not self activity. I just want to rush through this so that I can get it over with. And it's important to note that each new feeling that you experience ultimately is going to be tied and laced in to past experiences, right? Nothing exists in a vacuum here. And so the frustration and the anger with the reemergence of your shadow, and the new emerging of new feelings, like, that's a natural thing, right? One of the things that my buddy Kale talks about a lot, especially right now, is like, it baffles him that people are surprised that natural disasters, and they're so like, oh my God, like, this is so terrible. How could this happen? And he's like, that's the very kind of ideology and mentality that allows this shit to happen. It's like sorrow and woe and anger and frustration and these negative emotions. They're all a natural part of life. But if we again attempt to homogenize things, and we attempt to like perfectly define everything, which one could argue that human design is exactly that. And it can be, if you use it a certain way. But if we just actually came into contact with reality and accepted that, like, oh, the reason fires happen in such a destructive way is because we haven't been taking care of the grass. We don't have the fish ponds that we used to. The indigenous way of being, there were no fires like that, because if there were, the landscape was tended to in more than the metaverse was tended to, which is something that I'm hoping is emerging within this Discord, is this desire to have this level of cohesiveness and community in the real world. And ultimately, I'm inviting you, I'm giving you something to respond to. I'm, asking you to initiate. I'm reflecting that, like, you can be that regardless of your type and your authority, like, you can be the one to carry that that essence forward, and for other people to rally around you. And it only takes like 1 or 2 other people to rally around you, and you guys get together and just genuinely ask yourself the question, like, How can we tune in more to the land? For some of y'all, that's just literally taking regular trips out to wherever land there is. For some of y'all, that's doing some volunteer work, some community service. For some of y'all, that's building on a piece of land that maybe one of your friends owns, or whatever it is. It's just, again, it's important that for me at least, that what we're doing here doesn't stay online and doesn't stay in the metaverse, because at any point, like, they could just shut the internet off, right? And I would be heartbroken, because I'm like, oh my god, where's my family that I created? And I pray that that doesn't happen. And I'm also like wanting to prepare everyone for the possibility that, hey, if this gets shut off, you have my permission to call upon my personal essence, and maybe other people that you've connected with here, to remind you of who you are, remind you that we have a system, human design, but really the system is just the finger pointing, and it's pointing at the stars, it's pointing at the seasons, it's pointing at this slow developing march that often gets looked over, because this is so much more stimulating. And yeah, and with this gate, again, one of the big reasons why I'm like having such a hard time with this gate is because I spent a lot of my life like really preaching this kind of like how you say, full freedom and full creator, like whatever you want you can do it. And I'm not, I still sort of believe in that, but it's more like whatever you want you can do it, so long as you keep your feet on the ground. Because if you're laying down trying to run, you're not going to go anywhere. And so they say feet on the ground, head in the clouds, is a good way to be. But, and I said this before, it's like, it's okay to know where you want to go, but unless you know where you're at, you're not going to be able to pick a direction that makes sense. And so a lot of people know where they want to go, but they don't exactly know where they're at. And that's something that, in human design, I meet a lot of people who are, and I wouldn't say I meet a lot of them, but every now and then I meet someone who's like, convince me that human design will work. I don't really want to convince you. And they're like, oh, well, see, you can't do it. And I was like, oh, I could. I just don't think it would do you any good. Because if I convince you of something, then that means that I'm going to have to convince you of this and convince you of that. I would much rather you feel like the train has already left, and that you didn't get on, and that now you have an open mind. And at that point, I might share some things with you, but I also might be concerned in taking care of people who had faith and were willing to conduct the experiment for themselves, and that didn't need convincing. And that's one thing that is important to me, is like, there's people that are ready to go, but if I hold up this train, if I hold up this Discord in this community, so that until everybody gets on, some of y'all are going to get off, because you're going to be like, we're ready to go, why are we? And that's a healthy root pressure. Aggressive nodding, yeah, like we're not waiting for anybody, because ultimately, like, we're not fucking going. we're not going anywhere, guys. It's like, ultimately, it's like, wherever you're at, you always have to bring yourself with you. You know what I mean? And so there's no getting away from yourself. Thanks, I appreciate it. I just, and that's, I think, what I want to bring is like this, the truth, which is like, look, you already got it all within you. It's just about using what you got, right? Like, if you have a garden, or you're in a desert, maybe, there's certain things that you can't grow in a desert, right? You can't grow, certain types of fruit trees, or things that only grow in tropical forests, because you need certain conditions. And some people might be really upset. I can't grow fruit trees. I can't grow coconut trees in the desert. I actually can't grow coconut trees in the desert. I can't grow, strawberry guava in the desert. Like, there's not enough water. But what is there? There's sunlight. There's heat. What things do well in that? Cactus, dates, right? Everything, I think, needs water, right? But it's about how well it holds the water, right? And so this is a good example or analogy for conditioning, is like, if you're in the desert, don't be upset about yes, exactly. Cactus juice. Oh, I love that scene. That was so good. I'm like, damn, they're really putting psychedelics in a kids show. This is awesome. Because I do believe also, like, in more ancient cultures, that kids would be allowed to experience psychedelics, and that would be a part of their initiation manhood or womanhood. Angel says, "I see my drum." Oh yeah, that's mine. That's a buffalo, and then that's elk and buffalo. That's like a lodge drum. I'm like, you calling me out? Should I play a song for y'all? Okay, wait, hold on. Let me tune in. Is this ego? I'll do it for you guys. Okay, don't tell Kale that I did this. No, he would be okay with it. Oh, bruh. So flat. Okay, hold on. Let me get this one. Also probably flat. All right. Well. All right, guys. This is the first time that I'm playing one like this, and I think the reason I'm playing it is it's raining right now. The drum is flat, as here. But also, like, you know, I was invited to learn this song by my brother Kale, who you know, he invited me to this island with these songs and with this culture. And I'm actually, before I do this, I'm gonna just end the recording because I don't want this to be recorded. But I'll just play it for y'all live here.